things I have promoted is what I call culturally authentic assessment. A lot of the stuff we did in the 60s to change the curriculum, make things more equitable, has just been sidelined because of all the emphasis on testing and assessment.
Right.
So if that's where the game is, then that's where we need to be. So I worked with some teachers and developed a methodology that I call culturally authentic assessment. Culturally authentic because the parents have a chance to work with the teachers to collaborate on, well, what are we actually giving emphasis to, and what are we going to evaluate? And then in that conversation, parents are not just talking about, decorating the teacher's lunchroom or being a monitor on a field trip. They're actually talking with the teacher about the content of instruction and what is it that the community needs. We can talk about the concept of a relevant personality. What kind of children are we trying to produce for this day and age? And when parents and teachers have that conversation, then there's a more open space in the teaching and learning process for them to partner. So I had a teacher who adopted this method, and she worked with parents and created opportunities for parents and the children to make projects and do things together. And those projects that the kids produced, parents had a say-so in how they were going to be evaluated.
Really good. And did you want to jump in, or I can keep going?
You have another one that's related to it.
Well,
if you do, go ahead.
Well, the question that I was going to ask is, well, one, I wanted to focus on some of the other work that you're doing and trying to get engaged with the community. I know that you have a Congress, African Congress.
We had Black Education
Black
Congress.
Education Congress. That I know that you had one event in Chicago and things like that. And is that what some of that work aspired to do, was to bring different people around to have conversations?
It did.
So that maybe they could go for and sort of, if we can
It's a
add.
national summit on education and the National Congress. And following the meeting in Chicago, we had regional forums. We had a forum here in Atlanta, we had one in Detroit, one in California, one in Philadelphia. And local people helped to then share what they had gotten from the Congress at a local level. So that was not a funded organization, it was just volunteers, and we may do it again at some point, but right now it's sort of on hiatus. But there's a website people can go to see the Black Education Congress online.
So what do you think right now, from the conversations you've had, from the people that you've worked with and so forth, what are some of the major things that you think that we can collectively do to improve schools, particularly with either urban schools, Title I schools, diverse schools? What are some of the major things that you think that we as a community can focus on to sort of bring awareness or bring improvement? Not saying that these schools are just horrible. I know that is usually the narrative, but just some of the things that you've noticed that you would like to say, you know what, I think this could be a little bit better if we did this.
Well, one of the places where I've put a lot of emphasis is on the curriculum and enabling parents to look critically at what is being taught, what the children are learning, and to be able to talk with teachers about that. We just had a big, I just saw this in the news about a teacher in Marietta who was using a game she created, Underground Railroads, dice.
That's happened several times, yeah, you're right.
Okay,
right.
So you heard the parents, the mother and the grandmother, talking about this, and they're rightly concerned, but they don't have the resources to say to the teacher, here's the body of evidence that shows that what you're doing is damaging not only my child, but the other children in the classroom. And so this school ought to be responsible for preparing the staff to use the available knowledge and to do a better job. So the parents are just reacting.
Right.
But if they had an advocacy class or a group that they could turn to, they called the NAACP, but there was no support coming. So there's nobody that's waiting in the wings to fix all that. People really need to have the attitude that this is wrong, we need to do something about it, and we do have professional educators and researchers who know some things. So the parents could have called my institution, your institution, and said, we need some help. Can somebody come over here and help us deal with this? Instead, you just got an individual parent that's hurt and a child that's hurt.
And you were speaking about that, I think, a little bit with the New Orleans thing, with how the universities are land
Yeah, we
grants
had
to.
a community outreach office. We have a community outreach office here.
Right, okay. Interesting. Where were we gonna go?
So I was doing a little research on you, and I noticed that you have a strong background in sociology. And me personally, I'm very relative to sociology. I love it. And I just wanted to ask you, has that helped define who you are as a person? And what ways do you teach sociology? Or what are some methods or styles you use personally?
So I was an undergraduate sociology major, and my major professor was St. Clair Drake. I don't know if you've ever heard of his name. Okay, so as a student of St. Clair Drake, I had a Pan-African perspective on sociology. I had also a Black Studies perspective on sociology, and when I teach from a Pan-African Black Studies theoretical perspective. So that means that you're going to learn something about people in other parts of the world. You're also going to know something about the human capacity to change things.
So some of the work that I know that you've done, for one, you were talking about the curriculum, and I know that a couple of years ago you got together a team of people to host this idea behind the Song Poet Club. And I want to know, well, for one, if you can just talk a little bit about your idea for even creating that, and the curricula that you decided to utilize and things like that. What was the major idea behind that? And was it because you sought, why was this information, I guess, maybe critical for you think that for these students to know, for them to be engaged with?
Well, you were one of the teachers
Right.
in the Songback Group.
Right.
Also participated
Right.
in the conversation. Well, here at Georgia State, my students are doctoral students doing research on education. And I happen to know that often when I engage with my students, there are things that they just don't know. And that troubles me because as each year goes on, there's more that's not known. And so the gap is wider and wider. And one day I had a conversation with one of the students, or a couple of students, who were known to have been very excellent teachers. And I talked with them about some of the information. For instance, this is my husband's work, Our African Heritage. It's a poster that goes from, early human origins all the way through to the 60s. And it takes a perspective that's both African-centered and, there's information about Mexico, Haiti. I mean, there's a lot of information there. So I asked students, would you know how to teach this information to kids today? And they said no. So the Songhai Club is an opportunity that we were invited to do at a local middle school, and I conceived it as a pedagogical laboratory. An experience for the graduate students here, but also an experience for the children and their parents.
Having this time with you, you're very, like I said earlier, you're a very inspirational person. So I would like to ask you, what inspires you to inspire others?
Well, I'm very aware of things that are happening around me and beyond in the world. And I'm very saddened by the state of the world. So I do believe in the human capacity to make things different, and that's what I do every day.
I know that you've written prolifically about a wide variety of topics, but one thing I wanted to ask you quickly was you wrote a book entitled Black Mothers to Sons, right? And I wanted quickly, because you hear a lot of rhetoric, you hear a lot of conversations about Black mothers, right, that are raising sons. And so I wanted just to quickly, if you could, just give us a little information about what were you trying to capture with that book, and what would you want a lot of readers to understand? What do you want them to walk away with from that piece?
Well, we're working on a third edition to bring it out again. It was co-authored by myself and Carolyn Mitchell, who taught African American literature.
Okay.
And so we both were mothers of sons, and we both liked the blues, and we used to sit around talking about music and our kids and what was happening. And so we thought, you know, we ought to really try to look at this more systematically. So we interviewed mothers who were raising sons, mothers from different walks of life, and we participated in the study. So that was back in the 80s, and now people call that kind of research participatory
Exactly. Right.
action research. So we wanted to address the stereotype, the negative stereotype of black mothers that has dominated in the sociology literature. And we also wanted to offer researchers a different vision of how they could be relevant to the positive solutions that are needed in education.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dr. King, for your time. All right. And thank you for joining us on another series of the Brown Paper Bag. Stay tuned for more.
It's been a pleasure.